welcome all of you in, and those coming in at the door. There are loads of seats in here, so feel free to make your way around and make yourself at home. And welcome you into what I've now discovered, having been at both in the traffic and at the ploughing all morning. This is an oasis of calm, which is going to be very valued. But maybe not for long, because we have a very active and engaged discussion to look at the question of the impact of hubs and remote working on rural communities. My guests, and I'm going to go to them shortly and ask each of them to introduce themselves and give a little overview. You'll all recognise the Minister, Heather Humphreys, TD, Minister for Rural and Community Development. We're very fortunate, given the many other hats she wears and responsibilities she has, that she's been a huge supporter of this project from the outset, and we're delighted to welcome her here today. Brian Nerney is Manager of the Spool Factory Hub in Boyle, County Roscommon. Dr. Ian McCabe is a hub user and a community representative on Clare Island. Ian is a fantastic project that he's going to talk about, and I know you'll be really, really interested to hear about it. And then my colleague from Grow Remote, Tracy Keogh, is at the end of the line, but by no means the end of the list. As ever, Tracy, thanks a million for joining us today. So my name is Tomás O'Sheacon, and after I pick up my biro, my role is as CEO of the Western Development Commission. And just to give you some context on what we're talking about today, the National Hubs Network, or connectedhubs.ie, is something that's built up over the last 4 years. So when I think back to early 2019, this idea of people working in remote working hubs, putting up their hands and saying, I think other people are doing this. Could we not find a way to get together? So we started along the Atlantic coast, because the Western Development Commission has responsibility for development along the Atlantic coast. And we brought people into a room, 2 rooms in Sligo and in Limerick. And we thought we might get 30 or 40 people. We discovered over 70 people who represented remote working hubs had come to join us and have this discussion. And it grew from there with the support of the Minister and her department. It has become what I would describe as something of a phenomenon in terms of the engagement of the hub managers of communities around the country, which has really been something to behold. It happens in a broader context, and I'm going to come to the Minister to explore this on it, that in parallel, the introduction to remote working, looking at remote working legislation, all of these elements have come together. But of course, as everyone in the room knows, we're effectively supercharged by COVID. So what had been, let's say, from the point of view of the Western Development Commission, an issue that was looked at, as among other issues, all the way back from the time it was telework and e-work, has now moved centre stage, where we saw the pendulum swing in a global economic experiment where millions of people worked remotely. That will change, and the pendulum would swing back to some degree. But our challenge, and I think our opportunity, is to ensure that some of it holds, because it can play a key role in the development of communities across the country. So Bernadette is to my right. She's, I hope, cleaning up anything that I say and improving my speech as she goes through, and her colleague Michael will be joining her throughout. And I'm going to come to the Minister, Minister Humphreys, and ask you perhaps to give us your policy ambitions for rural Ireland and where you see remote working and the hubs within that.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Tomás. Tomás has given you an overview there of remote working, and personally, I think remote working has been a game changer for rural Ireland. When I was Minister for Business back in 2019, I launched a policy called Future Jobs, and that was all about the jobs of the future. And as part of that, we had a specific focus on remote working. And I remember talking to Tracy about it, and we had it at a cabinet meeting, and we had a press conference afterwards, and everybody was sort of saying, yeah, this sounds like a good idea, and you know, we'll probably think about it. And then COVID arrived. Well, it just transformed us all. We were forced into remote working, and it changed so many lives. It allowed people to work from their communities, to work from either from home or from a remote working hub. Now, we've all worked from home, and it's it's fine. It works for some. But when you've sat the whole day at the kitchen table and you get up with a sore back, you think to yourself, oh, this isn't such a good idea. So what we decided in the Department of Rural and Community Development was to invest in remote working hubs right across the country. We've been working with the Western Development Commission in that regard. So my department, through Town and Village Renewal, has invested in the region of 100 million euros. So a lot of that's gone into converting old buildings into remote working hubs in the centre of towns. It's also supported private operators to help them kit out their facilities. We do that through connected hubs. So we now have a wonderful offering of remote working hubs all over Ireland, and the Western Development Commission has mapped them out, and we have them on a website, or you can use your phone app to see where you can get a remote working space where you can go and work. And I think one of the dreams I had was that people often are on holidays, they might have to go back to their office maybe to hook in for a day or two to attend something or to deal with some issue. And I was thinking to myself, when they're along the wild Atlantic way, guess what? You can hop, do your business, and back out again. So this really has changed the way that it has changed the face of rural Ireland, and I'm determined that this momentum will keep going. So we have been offering support through connected hubs, and only in July we were giving everybody a taster of a voucher where you can get 3 days in a connected hub of your choice. So that means if you can agree with your employer that it's okay to work remotely, you can go in and try it out. And I would actually urge people to try it out. It's well worth it. So in terms of my own other wider part of my department is we have many different schemes in terms of investing in rural Ireland, making rural Ireland a better place to work, live, raise a family and invest. And it is working. And you only have to go into towns up and down the length, the breadth of the country, and you see the difference. And remote working has meant that it's bringing the footfall into the towns, and that means that there's people there that, there's business for the coffee shop, they're using the local services, and it has made such a difference. So we want to continue to work with the players, we want to work with the local authorities and with the Western Development Commission in ensuring that more people get that opportunity. The Taoiseach is currently bringing legislation through the Dáil which gives people the right to remote work. But I think what we need to do, and I know Tracy will touch on this as well, we need to break down those barriers, because some employers are thinking to themselves, maybe, they're not in the office, so maybe we're not getting the same level of productivity. Well, I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned, you get better productivity when people are working in a remote working hub. And the best example I had this morning was when I was coming here, I was sitting on that M50, and God knows by the time you get to work, there wouldn't be much productivity left in you, because it'd wear you out the length of time you'd sit on it. And I said, well, that's the best reason to have remote working, and make it work for your staff, make it work for your business. So we want to work with businesses, and we want to help them embrace remote working. And we need to embrace new technology, because that's what's allowing us to work remotely. It's all this technology that we're developing. We have wonderful companies in this country that are investing in new technology all the time. We need to embrace it, we need to use it, and it means that remote working can work for us, whether it's not, and it even goes further than that. Like some of our remote working hubs, and I know Brian's going to speak to it about his in Boyle, but also we can use it to make sure we can have medical appointments, you can have e-health. There's so much we can do with a fully kitted out with a remote working hub with good connectivity. So I'm really excited about it. I think that it has been a game changer, and we can't let that momentum slip, and we're going to keep doing it and keep encouraging more people to work remotely. And I have met so many people in hubs. I met a lady up in Donegal. She'd moved back from Dublin. She was working from home, and she had that extended family support in terms of child rearing. And it's great when you're living in your community. You can call on your family when you need a bit of help, or you need a bit of babysitting, or whatever else it is you want. You don't have that when you're living sort of away from the extended family. So these are the things that help and improve the quality of life. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking, because I really would talk all day about remote work, and I think it's the best thing ever. Thanks now.
No, thanks a million, Minister. It is remarkable when you touch on things like that balance of life and work. And really, there's a huge discussion around placemaking and what that means. And that's obviously often a difficult thing to grasp. But I think when you can see where the hubs are, where they're the focal point of a community and things begin to happen around them, and very much building that community. So we're going to talk about two communities today, perhaps the community on the ground, but equally, Brian Nerney, if I come to you in the spool factory in Boyle, the community of hub managers, because I think that at its core, from our point of view in the WDC, what we've seen is this emergence of a group across the country, between 80 and 100 people joining Stephen and Liam and others on the team with Leah and Pauline, in terms of talking about their experiences and finding new ways of doing things. Maybe talk to us first of all about the spool hub and then broaden it out to talk to us about the network.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. The spool factory in Boyle was a former newspaper office, and back in 2017, I decided to turn it into a co-working hub, long before I suppose co-working was heard of. And actually, Tracy was the first person I went over to in Galway. I'd heard about Tracy Keoghan, I heard about the co-working hubs, the Porter Shed, etc. in Galway, and Tracy put me on the right road, thankfully. And we came from that, and I suppose it came from, my background is in newspapers, and after 30 years in newspapers, I was left with one day not being involved in them anymore, and I started a website, and I was doing it from the kitchen table. And my wife used to say to me, when she come back, any news, and I'd say, unless the cats can talk, I don't know what's going on, because I didn't meet anybody. So when I heard about co-working hubs and I met Tracy, we came up with the spool factory, and we started it. And realistically, co-working hubs aren't, the pandemic, as Tomas has said, has brought it forward a piece. But even still, there are people who don't really know what co-working hubs are all about. And it's, I had a person come to me just after the pandemic, and they asked me, did I deliver the desk or would they collect it? Because they thought that we rented out desks and that we delivered them to their houses. So they didn't really know what co-working was about. But yes, there's a great bunch of people now involved in it. We've got great support from the Minister, which I thank her very much for. It's an ideal opportunity for rural Ireland at the moment. We have the co-working hubs all over the place. We have the support of government. We have the support of the Western Development Commission, support of all our colleagues in the hubs all over the country. There's a brilliant network of people who meet up, as Tomas said, every 2 weeks. And there'll be I think there was 120 on our last call of hub managers. And we all share ideas. And it's a very exciting future, I'd say.
So maybe, Brian, just talk to me in practical terms about what you see as the opportunity then with the hubs as the focal point. In other words, with things happening around the hubs. So not only when people come into you and they say, can I have a desk? What do you see as the next step? Because I know we're going to talk to Ian about some of the innovation stuff. We're looking at offering services. But in terms of being part of the broader picture, what opportunities do you see?
Well, I'm over 30 years now involved in community development around Boyle and County Roscommon, and I think this is the perfect storm. I see a great opportunity here for rural Ireland, and in particular, when you see our town centres that are lying idle at the moment, and I know there's an initiative by the government which is great to have town centre first, and I think this is critical. Boyle, and I know a number of other towns were chosen for a study on this as to why the places are lying idle. I mean, at one stage at home, I think we had 7 people living in the town centre of Boyle. Thankfully, that's changing now. I think if we can continue to get people to come back, continue with the incentives to get people to come back into our town centres, that in turn will improve the hubs. And the hubs will then become centres of the community. I suppose a community centre as such, because remember, it's not just about renting a desk. It's also a meeting space for community groups to meet in. We have recently signed a memorandum of agreement with one of the institutes of technology, or whatever, I think there's a new name on them now. There were ITs in my day, AITs at least, to be an outreach centre for their mature students. And that's brilliant. That makes Boyle, you could argue, a university town. And that would not have happened without hubs and without the support of getting hubs where they are. So I think they will be an integral part of the community going forward.
Okay, so Ian, perhaps if I come to you, because I think indeed, and as the Minister touched on, there are many opportunities to build communities. Very often the discussion in communities is around the delivery of public and private services. I think the project that you're engaged in Clare Island, and you might tell us about it, is really hugely innovative in terms of the provision of a key public service around health. So maybe set the context for us. Tell us first of all about Clare Island, where it's located, and the digital health hub that's on Clare Island.
Thanks everyone for having me here today. My name's Ian McCabe. I'm from Clare Island, born and bred. like everyone else, I went to secondary school and on to college and moved off to America and did more college over there. And I never expected or even thought for a second I could live on Clare Island full time until I came back. And I was very lucky in 2016 to get a job that I could do remotely. So moved back with my family, 3 kids in the school now. I've been working since then with the University of Galway. And for me personally, it means that I have a chance to live and work in the place that I love, that I have a chance to be in my community, a part of my community. And I'm there consciously. I'm there because I want to be there. And I'm, with that kind of mentality, I like to think that I'm trying to be active and give back to my community as well, and serving on voluntary boards and making sure that we all participate in the things that need to be participated in. And I was lucky enough to get a job in 2016 that I could work remotely from there. Now, in the intervening time, COVID has come and it's really completely transformed the remote working experience. In 2019, I was sitting in weekly meetings with the School of Physics in NUIG, and I was a face on a screen, and everyone else was sitting in a room. And overnight, it went from being ostracized to being everyone in the same situation. And that hasn't changed. Even though meetings can happen, they're now happening remotely all over the place. So it really has made it much more sustainable to do so. Now, with the hub, which is something that has come in since the BCP was installed on Clare Island, is now not just me. I was maybe the first person doing it, but there are 5 or 6 people working and living remotely. Now, this is a population of 150 people 3 miles out at sea. It makes a big difference. My kids, 3 kids in the school, there's 14 kids in the school. It makes a big difference. So everybody has the potential in a tiny place like that to have a big impact. And the hubs and the BCP and the connectivity and the switch to remote working is really transformative for a little place like Clare Island. And not only is it personally transformative, but it's brought opportunity, which you were referring to. And this is on the back of the WDC and the DRCD coming to Clare Island and putting in the hub. That it brought the very active community groups on Clare Island together with government forces and rural development, and some very innovative people at the University of Galway who have come up with this home health project. And this is about bringing remote healthcare to little communities like ours, taking advantage of the technologies that already exist to take some of the burden away from patients who live in these very remote areas who would possibly have to travel for a few days to see a consultant. And we're in the early stages still, but it was a remote consultation happened last week for the very first time. We had a patient on Clare Island. He had been hooked up with blood glucose monitor, blood pressure monitor, scales, everything connected. He had a consultation with the consultant in Galway, was able to look at the screen, see all of his vital signs and track them over the course of the previous 2 weeks. Could alter medication, make recommendations, and save this man 2 days of travel. This is an octogenarian who would normally travel to Galway the night ahead, spend a couple of days on the mainland so he could do standard, regular things. So there's the potential on the back of the hubs to have some serious innovation in our rural communities and make big changes.
Thanks a million, Ian, because I know part of one of the things that both ourselves and the department are involved in is an innovation partnership with Cisco. And those companies are really, really eager to pick on examples of really innovative thinking like these. And I know that this is one of the projects that they're really, really excited about, among others. One of the projects that certainly generated considerable excitement over the last few years has been Grow Remote. Tracy Keogh, I think, is it fair to describe Grow Remote as a mission? And if it is, what is it?
Thanks very much, and thanks for having us here. So Grow Remote is a non-profit. We're a social enterprise on a mission to make sure that employment is available and accessible to everybody across the country equally. I explain it differently every time I say it, and sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer. But really what we want is in a couple of years' time For every regular career that you'd have, and you'd go onto the careers website of some big corporate in Dublin, that job will be advertised with no location. So your location will be as irrelevant to your employment prospects as any other factor of you is or should be. And with that, what we can do is actually what was just mentioned there about the time in the communities. And it reminded me of a survey that we were doing. It hasn't been finalised yet, but it's the only living census of remote workers in Ireland. And we asked for people to quantify the amount of hours they're giving back to their community since they began to work remotely. And I think the number that's coming in, the average now, is about 4 hours per week. Think about an hour going to Tidy Towns, an hour going to Men's Sheds, an hour into the local GAA team and your local DIY garden. I mean, that's extraordinary. Talk about town centres, like all your flowers will be painted. I mean, it's really extraordinary. But the idea is that it's teach a man to fish. It is a first principles approach to community development. We want to give people the money and the time to spend in their local communities. One big shift that we want to see in the world of remote work is that traditionally, remote work was for what you would call the top 2%. If you went up to Dublin for long enough, you worked up long enough, your boss was sound enough, you might get the ability to work from Clare Island. We want to change that so that there's systemic change, that employment is available to everybody. And that is there. So there's about 80,000 remote jobs open in Ireland today. And these are companies that advertise jobs with no location and make them available across the country. And we just need to get them into communities to help them to grow.
So Tracy, talk to me about some of those jobs in terms of, obviously there are differing skill levels within those. So very often people will say, you know, I'm at an entry level, or I think more importantly, and this is something that we're seeing in another example, you know, where people are involved in seasonal employment, in tourism, where people, particularly in this context, would be involved in farming, perhaps part-time. Are there opportunities for everybody, or what help is needed to get them into those opportunities?
Opportunities for everybody. We were out on Boffin Island last weekend. I was very lucky to be packing snorkels as part of my business travel kit. And it was the most amazing snorkel I've ever had. But that's besides the point. For the locals on Boffin Island, the likes of eBay and Shopify were coming up. Both of those companies, IDA companies actually, IDA have done superb work in this regard, but entry-level roles. Not only is it not just for tech, they explicitly say, don't come from tech. We want any other background. You know, we want hospitality, we want retail, we want all of those things. So it's really important to say that. In remote companies, and it was actually Deirdre Frost in the WDC that explained this difference to me in terms of how remote work was years ago versus how it is now. The whole model is being built around remote work. So basically the company is location agnostic. And so remote work is just how they work. Your perks are your pensions, your sick pay, your everything else you'd expect in Dublin city centre, and we've come to not expect in the likes of Clare Island. But so all levels, all roles, all sectors. But if people do need support, together with eBay, IDA Ireland and Laois and Offaly ETB, we have 2 free nationwide training courses for anybody who needs support. All the way from I don't know what Zoom is to I know what Zoom is, but I'm not quite sure how to work really productively remotely. We have all that available to everybody everywhere for free.
Okay, before I come back to the Minister, Brian, I just want to come back to you in terms of that awareness raising, because over the course of our time, very often, and this is something we've seen with remote work, has changed because of the pandemic, in that people are clearer on what remote work is, how it can work. But to look at issues like a remote working hub and what it is and what it offers, how has awareness increased? And I know that the Minister and the Department have supported a huge amount of awareness raising, but what other awareness raising is needed to get the message across? Who are the cohorts that don't know about this or fully understand it as yet?
I think the marketing campaign that has been done by the WDC is great as well, and that's really been a benefit to us. But I think the important thing is to get the people across. And in that regard, with the help of Grow Remote, we've had a number of open days. Some people are just afraid to come in. It's like going into a bar or a restaurant for the first time. And you say, God, I don't know, will I go in there? And then you cross and you say, God, this is a lovely place. And I think every one of the hubs are done up to such a high standard at the moment that if people get across the threshold and see it, so we have open days. We go around. When I started off at the Spool Factory, first of all, I went up to the train station in Boyle at 6:20 with handouts. I gave them out to all the people who actually were commuting from Boyle at 6:20 in the morning. And I went to a neighbouring town and did the same. And I said to them, you know, this is, come in and see the spool work, or the spool factory. Come in and see what it works like. So I think the likes of that, having the open days, getting the people in to see it, and word of mouth, of course. Anybody who comes into the spool factory or out of the co-working hubs, I'm quite sure, see what's on in there, to see how simple it is to work, how simple it is to book it through connected hubs, how the beautiful atmosphere that we have. Like during the summer, we were all in shorts. Nobody was wearing shirts and ties. It's a very casual thing. The work is, as the minister said, the work gets done. I think when people see that, it tells the tale itself.
So, Minister, to come back to you, because I know that earlier in the summer, one of the initiatives that really made a huge difference was around the Connected Hub scheme, offering people the opportunity to go in and work. We've now seen that, you know, that the occupancy is increasing. We're moving up towards 70% of the occupancy of those existing hubs. Like, what's your vision for where this can go and what the further opportunities are?
Thanks, Tomas. Well, our plan, first of all, in our rural future is that we will have 400 hubs up and down the length and breadth of this country by the end of 2025. And we're actually I think we're going to well exceed that target, because as we speak today, we have 283 hubs that are on our connected hub system. And there's another 70 odd coming on stream. So which will bring us up to 359 hubs. So there's a hub beside you. That's all I can say. There's definitely one in your area. Go and check it out. And earlier in the year, we launched a taster. So that meant you could get 3 free days in a hub. And we're trying to encourage people to use those days. So all you have to do is get your phone, log on to connectedhubs.ie. We have an app. Pick out where you want to go, and you can do it for nothing. So that's 3 days you get. So we have launched, we launched phase 1 of that, and today we're launching phase 2 of that. So get the phone out, try the remote working hub, try it out. It really is, it's worthwhile. I've been to some of them, and as has been said, they are top class facilities. You don't have to worry about turning the heating on and turning the heating off. It's all done for you. You actually go into a very, very comfortable environment in which to work. The second thing we're doing also is we are working with local authorities very closely. So we have provided funding to 23 local authorities. And what we want them to do now, we want them to actively market their county on why you should come and work in that county, and all of the facilities that are available to you, including your remote working hubs. So we want to draw people back into rural Ireland, because at the end of the day, people are what breathes life into rural Ireland. People are what builds communities. People are what helps get out the local football team. And we often heard we can't make a team. Now we can make a team, because remote working will allow us to do that, because it brings people back, as I said. So, and the other thing now, just, and Brian mentioned about the Town First policy. I was delighted earlier today just to meet the first, it's a new position. It's a coordinator for Town First. I think this is going to be a game changer too for rural Ireland, because we're going to have Town First officers in each local authority. They're going to focus on how we get more people back working and living in the centre of our towns. So I'm working with Minister Peter Burke and in the Department of Rural and Community Development, and also with him in driving that forward. And we have invested a huge amount of money in converting and renovating old buildings through the local authorities. So that's something we want to keep doing. But what we're doing then is we have another initiative on the 24th of November, and we're going to have a hub summit, and it's going to be in Roscommon. And we want people to come in. We want to hear your views. We want to hear what the barriers are and what difficulties you're facing, because we're going to address those, because we want more people to use remote working. We want to hear from businesses. We want to hear from people who are providing the hubs, and so we can have that conversation. So we have something good here, and we're going to make it better. And I really want to say thanks to Tracy and to Ian and to Brian. And I've been out on Clare Island, and I can tell you, if you haven't been there, it's worth a visit. I listened to Ian here, and he said 3 kids going to the local school. Like, if you did a percentage increase, that's massive on Clare Island. So it means so much to the island communities when you have families moving back. And this remote working has allowed us to do this. So I think there's a bright future ahead. We want to work with you, and we want to make it happen. So thank you.
Thanks a million, Minister. Well, what I might do is just to highlight those 3 things that just because I made a note of them there, that you're relaunching the Connected Hub scheme, which I think worked really, really well. The additional funding for 23 local authorities across the country. Tracy, I might get your view on that, on kind of what messages they might, and then the Hub Summit in Roscommon. So obviously, being the man from Roscommon, Brian, I'll have to come to you on that and see that you may have an increase in bookings coming. But like you talked about the Hubs community earlier, what is the opportunity of bringing all of those people together and hearing from them in one particular place?
I think it's brilliant, and I'm delighted to hear us in Roscommon, and thank the Minister yet again. And it'll be great, because there's all good news stories, and that's what will come out of that summit, I'm quite sure, because I don't think anybody has gone into a hub and come out with a negative feeling out of it. Everything has been good. And just quickly, there's a lady who, just when we were talking, everybody talking there about the connectivity, etc. There's a lady in the hub in Boyle, and she was working in banking in Canary Wharf in the UK. She's moved herself, her husband, and her 3 children back to Boyle. She sold her house over there at a good price, came back, bought a house in Boyle for a fraction of what she was paying for a house over in London. She's continued with her job. She's continued at the same salary. She's involved in the soccer club. She's involved in the GA club. And as you were talking here, her kids are involved in the school. And another just very quick one. I had 2 people over last Christmas working in the hub. They were originally from Boyle. One worked in Munich, one worked in America, and they worked American time 2 to 10. And when they got talking, they were both in the same business, and it transpires their companies had been discussing things to each other. They didn't know that they were both from Boyle, and now they have a better working relationship because they made the connection in the hub. It'll be great. But to go back to your original question, yes, I think it's great, because there'll be good news stories coming out of that, where everybody can share their experiences of hubs.
No, thanks a million, Brian, because I think it's bringing those people together. And Tracy, from your point of view, this is something that, in terms of Grow Remote, you've worked in town tasters. In other words, welcoming people into communities, engaging with them, saying, when you arrive, this is what you should do, this is who you should talk to. I mean, talk to me about how you would see if that kind of funding is going to local authorities. What difference could that make in terms of raising the profile on the ground?
Well, sorry, it's great to hear about the town centre coordinators. I think that's the most exciting thing that I've heard in the last, I don't know how long. That's fantastic. It's just incredible. So town tasters were developed by a woman, Deirdre Wallace, who runs Dingle Hub, who's just brilliant. And she was talking about us after our first conference in Tralee in 2018. And she said, all this talk is really good, but like, how do we make it actually impact us? So what we did is we ran town tasters. We've done them in Lisbon, in Portugal, in Dingle, and in Valencia Island. And the idea is that locals know the local world best. So you'll say, I know that I want to leave Dublin, perhaps, not that we're anti-Dublin, but move someplace else. I don't know where I can go. So they book in for a session for a town taster, and somebody like Deirdre Wallace introduces them to school principal, whoever runs the knitting club, if that's what you're into, whoever runs the badminton club, which I love, if that's what you're into, whatever it is. And it's getting underneath the surface. And people like Deirdre Wallace help people get homes before they're even on the market, those kind of things. And actually in Valencia Island, same as we were talking about there about the schools, I was on Boffin Island last weekend, and a lady there put it brilliantly about remote work in islands. It's about kids in the school. That's what it comes down to. But Valencia Island, Conor O'Connell, one of our local volunteer chapter leads down there, ran a town taster and got 2 families to come to the island. That prevents the school from closing. If the school closes, it's very hard to get it back open. If you're maintaining it, you can grow it. So, I mean, it's just the potential. The word transformative was used, and it's used so much in life in general, but the potential is just significant. And the awareness funds that went to all the local councils, again, were just exactly what we need. Awareness is the biggest issue. And we were very lucky to, I suppose, be able to brief all the councils. The one thing that I would just say is, as we're talking about remote work, we need to make sure that Automatic, Shopify, Wayfair, all of these world's biggest remote companies become part of our conversation in our language, so that the phrase, sure, there are no jobs down here anyway, becomes eradicated, because it is simply now incorrect. That's what I think about that, Tomas.
Thanks, Tracy. And before I come back to the Minister to draw this to a close as we wrap up, Ian, I might just come to you because I think in terms of the work that's being done in Clare Island, like we described it as innovative, you've talked about the home health project that's coming from it. But in broader terms, what are the opportunities to take that idea to other areas? How transferable is it? And what is the importance of that joined up thinking that I think you have WDC, Cisco, Mayo County Council, NUI, Galway supported by SFI, all those different stakeholders and the Clare Island community involved in delivering an idea?
It's a very important stakeholder you mentioned there at the end. That's the community on Clare Island. And I'm sure this is replicated across all rural areas, that you have a community who are desperate for a lifeline. And when it comes, they grab onto it. And they've done so in this case. What's being done with the home health project, while it is life-changing for people, it's using stuff that is readily available, and it's putting the pieces together. We're connecting the different dots that are already there. So it's imminently transferable. This is something that could be rolled out quite easily in other rural areas. And this is just one example of an innovative project that's come from the WDC and HSE and everyone being together. But these hubs are going to create many more of these. I'm certain of it.
Thanks a million. And Derek O'Keefe, I know, is here today. That's been a key player in making sure that all of this happens and comes together. So I want to thank you and your colleagues and other clinicians that are agreeing to engage with the project. Minister, as we draw this to a close, I know that you've made those announcements, but I think surely over your time as Minister, you'll have seen lots of exciting projects come to fruition. Not to put you on the spot, but I'd say you'd be hard pushed. Like in terms of grassroots engagement across the country, I think surely this has to stand out as one of the key initiatives during your time.
Yes, I believe that remote working is the game changer, and the remote working hubs are the best way to do remote working. Because you have the social interaction, and as Brian has said, you get to meet people, and ideas start to come forward, and creativity, and you can really make things happen. And I was in a remote working hub, of course, in Monaghan one day, and it's called the Station House, and there you had people who had met each other. They were working together from different companies, but great things were happening. And I think of all the money that rural people spend on educating their young people. They educate them, and then they get jobs in Dublin, and they're gone. They don't come back. This is the difference that remote working can make. Those highly educated young people can get jobs in their local area, in their local community, and they can contribute back. So really, I think this is a wonderful game changer. And Ireland, because we grasped this very quickly because we saw opportunity. So now if you're a foreign investor coming into Ireland, you don't have to go to a particular place to find the right skill set. You'll get it across the whole country. So therefore, we have a competitive edge there. And the work that has been done in mapping all of the available remote working hubs, we are lighting up this country. And I honestly believe that it will be, and we will reap the benefits in the years to come as well. So I'm really excited about remote working. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Minister. So finally, from my point of view, I just want to thank those, indeed the Minister and her department and all the colleagues for inviting us here today. But I would urge you, when you go, download connectedhubs.ie, look at it on the website, try it out and see, because we see the future as very, very exciting in terms of both the delivery of public and private services. We've heard from Ian about the engagement with Cisco on the innovation side. We've other projects going where we're delivering services to hub users at a reduced rate. But I think the most important thing is that community of people coming together and making a change. So again, in turn, can I say a Gurmila Magav to Minister Heather Humphreys, to Dr. Ian McCabe, to Brian Nerney, and to Tracy Keogh. And thank you all very, very much for listening and engaging today. Gurmila Magav.